haven't checked the weather yet, but I know it is the perfect day to chat about adult Jewish literature. I'm Cheryl Stahl. Thanks for joining me here at Nice Jewish Books. Today, it is my pleasure to be hosting Elyssa Friedland, author of Jackpot Summer. Welcome, Elyssa.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It is my pleasure. So can you tell me about your book?
Sure. Jackpot Summer, which is my sixth novel, is about a family, the Jacobson family, who are from New Jersey, and they grew up with a home at the Jersey Shore on Long Beach Island. And when the book opens, all four Jacobson children are actually adults. They're adult siblings in different places in their lives, and they are gathered together with their father for the unveiling of their mother's gravestone. She passed the year before. And when they're together, the father announces that he's going to sell their beloved Long Beach Island home, which is devastating to the kids, the adult kids, I should say. And he asks for their help to pack up the house for over July 4th weekend because he's going to sell it and he wants to move to Florida. So the family is all reunited in this treasured house full of memories. And on a whim, well, actually, I won't give it away, but there's a reason one of the siblings, Noah, needs to leave the house. He says, I'm going out. They see a story on TV. I'm going out to buy a Powerball ticket. And two of his siblings, his two sisters, say, hey, you know what? Count us in. And they throw a few bucks his way. But the oldest Jacobson, Matthew, who's the most serious, most corporate of the bunch, he and his wife look at each other and think, the lottery is for fools, and they opt out. Well, you can imagine exactly what happens. The lottery ticket is a winner, and three of the four Jacobson siblings are overnight millionaires. And then the rest of the book follows first year of their lives and how the money changes them in totally unexpected ways, how winning the lottery is not at all what they expected, and it affects each of them differently. And then, of course, they have the looming question of should they cut in their fourth sibling? And their dad plays a big role. I think that pretty much sums up the book in a nutshell.
Yep, sounds about right. So clearly a lack of money can be a huge problem, but the inverse, having lots of money, doesn't necessarily make everything better, as the Jacobsons found out.
I definitely agree for sure that having a lot of money is not a recipe for happiness. It can be great. It's not a guarantee that things will be great. I would add a particular wrinkle with the Jacobsons is that the money came overnight. It's not a question of, an extremely rich person who, worked their butt off for decades and really, over time built up a huge amount of money. I still think it's complicated to have a huge amount of money, but I think it's extra complicated, extra difficult, extra unnerving, and makes you feel uncertain and unworthy when it comes to you out of the blue. And you don't feel like you earned it. You also don't get it gradually. So it's like all of a sudden your bank account is flush. When you used to have to, you would never take a taxi, you take the subway everywhere, and then suddenly you're like in a limousine.
Yeah, and all the siblings are in different economic states. So Matt, who's the corporate lawyer, is well-to-do, not, multimillionaire, the one who opted out of the lottery. And he has indeed been working his butt off for the money, along with his wife. And his wife had grown up really poor. And so it was really important to her to give their son every opportunity that she didn't have when she was growing up. The Jacobsons, on the other hand, grew up, I guess, working class, middle class. No, it must have been middle class since they had a summer home.
Middle class.
But their parents were frugal, but they had everything they needed and a lot of things that they wanted, but there didn't seem to be lots of money just to be thrown around.
Correct.
Their parents spent wisely and budgeted and all that. So I think that was kind of part of when the siblings were thinking, should they cut the oldest one in, they're like, well, he already has money. But it's still, but as he said, he worked hard for that.
I think that they are, for sure, they don't see him as needy. I think if he was someone that they saw didn't, maybe he just wasn't there that evening, let's say theoretically, and he was someone who needed money, they would have given it to him in a heartbeat. I think it's, they don't hand over the money. I don't want to give away what they end up deciding, but certainly right away, they don't. And they think, well, he's very comfortable, but they really didn't like the way he treated them when, he went to see them buying a lottery ticket, and he and his wife kind of scoffed and looked down like, ugh, as if we would ever like even throw $1 away to buy a lottery ticket. I mean, that's such a foolish. I mean, they say it's like a tax on, stupid people. Like some people say that about the lottery. And the siblings feel a little wounded. I think they feel like Matthew and his wife, Beth, do look down on them. None of them are as successful as he is. And Beth, they don't have as much money. They just feel like they just think Beth and Matthew think they're in another class, And so I would say that might even have played a larger role, the dismissiveness of the lottery and the feeling that the siblings were being foolish to even bother to spend a few bucks on it and wait in line for a ticket. That impacted them far more than even like the fact that knowing that Matthew has a perfectly good job.
Mm-hmm. So I think one other kind of underlying issue in the whole family, well, and with money, is that money can fix things that the problems that a lack of money makes. Like if you don't have money to pay the rent, then money can fix you paying the rent or the mortgage or buying food. But if that's not what the problem is, then money can't really fix it. And I think that's part of the struggle that all of them went through. And one of the issues is the lack of communication, I think, among the siblings and between the siblings and those who have spouses and the kids and the father and the kids. And it's a little ironic because the kids had a group chat. So they were constantly chatting, but in a way it was kind of superficial. Mm-hmm. So they didn't say the issues that they were, that they were struggling with in their lives.
I think that's very true. I know since this book came out, so many groups of siblings have come out and told me that they have a group chat with their siblings and that felt like it was really similar to what I wrote in the book. And they loved seeing that, but agreed that it's typically like light inside jokes and, even sending around funny memes. And it's awesome in the sense that it's a very easy way for all the siblings to stay connected frequently in a way that if we didn't have group chats, like it's not nearly the case that everyone would call each other as much and people are spread out across the country. But, on the flip side, everyone agreed, like that's not the place where you drop a major problem that you're having. No real deep discussions happen on a group chat. And I think that's really what the beach house symbolized. Like it was a small house and they were all crammed in it together. And it's when you're together in a physical space that not only like do the real conversations happen, but the real problems just become evident. Like it's much easier for a sibling to hide a problem in their career, a problem with their spouse on a group chat. But when you're, brushing up against them, brushing your teeth in a small house and spending all day with them, you can't hide that something's wrong. And I think the beach house was really seminal to their closeness because that type of thing won't ever happen on a group chat. And so you have to really make the time to be physically together.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I don't know if you want to kind of go through the siblings or if that would be too spoilery.
No, I'm happy to talk about them. So I'll go in age order. So Matthew is the oldest. He is married to Beth and they're corporate lawyers and they have one son. And as you said before, because Beth grew up very poor without the luxuries and the tennis teacher and the tutors and this and that. Like they have a very bright son, and she has, sort of like you always want what you can't have. And she's like, I want to give this child every opportunity. I knew I was smart, but no one helped me get an internship. No one helped me, develop my math skills like outside of the classroom. And she's like throwing everything at this child, except for a childhood. So she's, getting him the fancy chess tutors and this and that. Meanwhile, when she feels like she's made it in this world, she can keep up with the best of them, in terms of her child. But in fact, like he's really missing a childhood. And it becomes, seeing him, Austin, at the beach house, it's more obvious that he's, as he's doing his workbooks, and then there's like old sand toys all over and messy art projects from the Jacobsons when they were younger. You can really see the juxtaposition. And that's really drawn also from what I see a lot. I have 3 children, and we live in New York City, and it's very rat race. And I definitely see like 9-year-olds going for extra math, like not tutoring, like enrichment, and that sort of intense helicopter parenting. I had wanted to write about that. And then the next sibling, which is really interesting, is Laura. She's married. She's married to a dentist, to her college sweetheart, and 2 daughters, and she's about to become an empty nester. And she's been a stay-at-home mom for her whole life. She was unable to develop a career, because she had children so young, and her marriage is really at a crossroads. I won't say more about that, but when the book opens, like, shortly after the book opens, like her and her husband really reach like a very dramatic moment. And then she wins the lottery. So here is this, like, she's facing a major change in life, really big issues with her husband, 2 children out of the house, first time empty nester, and now a millionaire. And she definitely tries to use the money to help her relationships in different ways with her daughters, with her husband. And, it's certainly not that easy. And then I really enjoyed writing Sophie, the other sister. I'll explain why I loved writing her. So she has a boyfriend. She's an elementary school art teacher, and she wants to, or she believes that she is just an elementary school art teacher because she needs to pay the bills. But what she would really love to do is be a full-time artist, like support herself, sell her art, and make enough money, so that she doesn't have to do this teaching gig. Well, she certainly can do that when she wins the lottery. But as it turns out, it wasn't necessarily time that was the problem. And inspiration comes from places she didn't expect. And having all the time in the world and having a fancy place to paint doesn't necessarily mean that you're able to produce what you thought you could. And I think about that a lot because as a writer, there is definitely an element of like, if I only had more time, if I only had someone else to help take care of my children, if I only had a better office setup with another monitor and this, like, but you don't really need those things to write a book. And so for me, it was like, I really enjoyed writing that character. And then finally, the baby of the family, who's the baby by quite a number of years. So he's sort of like somewhat apart from the other siblings, is Noah. And he's really an arrested development case, mama's boy, baby of the family, could not love Long Beach Island more, lives there all year round, is absolutely devastated when his father says they're going to sell the house. And for a guy like Noah, winning the lottery was the strangest thing ever because here's someone with no material wants. I mean, you give him, a comfy couch and some friends to hang out with, and he's perfectly happy. He's got a heart of gold, and that he really runs into a problem that a lot of lottery winners run into, which is that people come out of the woodwork and ask you for money.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something, as I was doing research for the book, that I learned about, that you get letters and emails and people confront you and they tell you you owe them money, your grandma owed their grandma money, and now it's payday, or strangers coming to you with sob stories. And Noah's a young, innocent guy, and it's really hard for him to say no. He's good-natured. He suspects that some of these things are scams, but how does he know? And he really spirals, you know. He's also someone who the money, you know, he didn't quite realize, like he stops working, and he also didn't quite realize how much his job meant to him. So, and I did want to share, I know this is going a little bit of a segue, but I wanted to share a really interesting piece that was in the New York Times. This was a number of years ago. The Surgeon General, I think his name is it Vivek Murthy, I think. The Surgeon General, they always pick like one issue that's going to be sort of the hallmark of their administration. And this doctor, the Surgeon General, picked loneliness. He wanted to end social isolation. He became Surgeon General after COVID, and it was, you know, it made sense, like on the heels of COVID, that he would want to focus on that, because certainly COVID unmasked a lot of social isolation. So he writes this op-ed in the New York Times, which starts by him talking about a patient that he was seeing when he was in practice. He was, you know, an internist, and he had this lovely patient, a man, middle-aged, in good health, who had a factory job, lived in a housing complex, and was just a healthy guy, healthy, happy guy. And he returned to him, you know, for his checkup a year later, and he had depression, hypertension, diabetes, mentally and physically, he was way worse than he had been in his physical the year before. And what had happened in the intervening year? He had won the lottery.
Wow.
He won the lottery. This is fascinating. It's an amazing op-ed. He won the lottery, which meant he quit his job. So he didn't have purpose when he got up in the morning. He didn't have his coworkers anymore. He left his apartment in a tight, compact housing complex, and he bought a beautiful house in a gated community where he couldn't see any of his neighbors because the property was so big. And lo and behold, he grew lonely, he grew depressed, and those, as we know how much the emotional and the physical are tied, those psychological problems led to health problems. And the lottery win was the worst thing to ever happen to him. And I thought that was so interesting, you know, in light of what I was writing at the time.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah, you did have some quotes in the book about lottery winners. Were those real quotes? It looked like they were newspapers about people who'd won the lottery and ended up bankrupt.
So I start the book with some fictitious news articles about winners and what happened to them. And they're just combinations. I mean, there's so many articles about lottery winners. And so when I created fictitious ones, I grabbed bits and pieces from different articles that I read, and I put them in. And then of course there's the number of fake ones, but they are all based on real stories and what's happened to people in real life who won the lottery. And then the last fictitious article is about the Jacobsons and their win.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I want to get back to the Jacobsons and their father, who was a loving father, but took a lot of bit of a backseat to his wife, who is the primary parent. And he thought that she was just the perfect parent. And he let her, or forced her, to do all the parenting because in his mind she was so good at it. So that was another relationship that needed to be kind of healed during this process. It's kind of aside from the lottery, but because of his decision to sell the house, and and the kids needed parental support. And he was like, I don't know how to do that. If only your mother was here. And, I forget which one of the daughters said to him, she wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
But the thing was, she was there.
Yes. I think I know that's definitely, I usually don't write about my own family because I write fiction to escape, but I know that dynamic definitely exists in my house, where my mom, first of all, it was a different time raising us, definitely more traditional gender roles in parenting. Mm-hmm. But my mom just had like a bigger personality. Like, she's louder. She speaks her mind easily and freely. And probably because of that, and she was more nurturing when we were little, like, we always went to her with our problems. And I think that my dad didn't have confidence in himself. Like, I think he felt like she was just better at this. Like, she didn't seem to hesitate. She didn't seem to need his opinion or want his opinion. And my dad has always been like a quieter force in our lives. And then, but I've been really touched and amazed by when I do connect with him. Like, he has wonderful advice, not all the time, but he has given me great advice. He sees more than I think he sees. And I think that with Sylvia Jacobson gone, Leo is like, he has never had to really, really parent. Like, any sort of issue that came up, if a child was fighting with their spouse, like, they would call their mom to vent, or was debating a new job, they would call the mom. And now, Leo is in his 70s and no one's ever called him until now. And I think he's insecure, and I think he has never played this role. He misses his wife too. He's reeling from grief, and I think it takes him a while to realize that he needs to step up. And I think those words from his daughter were super reassuring. Like, you don't have to be right. Like, first of all, we just want to know you're there. Like, we want to know that you love us, which I don't think they ever doubted, but that you're also always there just to listen. But the best thing you can do is give us what you consider to be your best advice. But if it's wrong, it's wrong. It doesn't mean that we'll be mad at you afterwards, that we're going to hold you responsible. Like, we recognize all mom was doing was giving, the best advice that she thought, was going to be the best path. But like, she was wrong too, but it didn't stop her from trying again next time. And I think that he felt really free. First of all, it's always nice to feel needed. So just hearing the kids say, we really need you, I think was a good wake-up call for him. He sees an opportunity. His wife was larger than life, big personality. He was quieter. And like, if there's a silver lining of her being gone, it's like, now people are listening to him. Like, we all know people who have like quieter personalities and they're overshadowed easily. And then when they get the chance to step into the spotlight, sometimes they have really interesting things to say. So Leo really does rise to the occasion. And I think he feels free because he knows he doesn't have to be correct, that it's okay. One, it's okay to just listen. And two, it's okay to give advice, even if it's not necessarily, the ultimate problem solver.
Mm-hmm. On the theme of being there, but on the flip side, and again, if this is too spoilery, I'll take it out. But one of my favorite moments was when a few of their mother's friends from their congregation approached the kids and says, your mom was always involved in this fundraiser. It's so important to the congregation. We would love to have you involved. And the kids get together and say, $75,000. Well, we'll each write a check. We'll take care of it. And the women come back and say, we didn't want your check. We wanted you. We wanted you to be there to honor your mother's work and her involvement.
I think that it's not uncommon for people with money to be very generous, but often take the easy way out, which is to say, you give money, you could give a lot of money, but if you're not giving any of your blood, sweat, and tears, you're not really making the sacrifice that others are making, and the more meaningful sacrifice. Listen, there's like, I think there, I forget which rabbi said, but there's like there's head Jews, heart Jews, and hand, heart, head. Yes. So like head Jews are like, maybe studying Torah. They are thinking about deep Jewish intellectual issues. There's Jews who, feel Judaism in their heart and they're very spiritual. And then there's hand Jews, and that's like Jews who support, and they use money, and they're all important and they're all necessary. But I think for Sylvia, the mother, like, she was a heart Jew. Like, she poured her heart into everything she did for her synagogue. And to really continue her legacy, it takes a lot more than writing a check.
Yeah, I thought that was a a beautiful moment, disconcerting for them, but a beautiful realization.
But a good wake-up call.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you did research. Was there anything in your research that surprised you?
Yeah, well, I didn't realize like how much taxes take. I mean, I know that taxes are huge, but I had no idea like that the advertised amount of when you hear on the news there's a $1 billion Powerball, how much less that the winner takes home. And while it's still a vast sum, you give, first of all, like you cut that number in half if you take the lump sum, because you have the choice of taking a lump sum or getting an annuity for 29 years. And everyone basically chooses the lump sum, which so then they discount it to present value. So that's already cutting the number advertised in half, if not more than half. And then the lottery tax is half, so that's like half to taxes. Then you have your state taxes. And so not that I would snooze at that, but someone who wins an advertised $1 billion Powerball might net like $200,000. I mean, sorry, $200 million, which of course is a lot of money. But if you win a $1 billion Powerball and you're advertised that they've advertised, and then you're the winner on TV, I think everyone who's watching is like, wow, that guy has $1 billion. But in fact, he does not have anywhere close to $1 billion. And those numbers matter more in this book with the Jacobsons because they don't win $1 billion, they win far less. And so the numbers of like in terms of cutting Matthew in and what they're going to do with their money, they're far, far wealthier than they were before, but they're not so wealthy that like they can just do whatever they want, whenever they want, for as long as they want.
Right.
But people don't realize that because they hear how much they won. First of all, people don't always take into account, but there were other winners from other states. So they had to divide it, and then they took the lump sum. And then the Jacobsons had to divide it amongst the three of them, and they paid huge taxes. So just learning like the mechanics of the lottery was interesting, and I had absolutely no idea. I mean, I'm no dummy, but if I saw on the news that someone won $1 billion Powerball, I definitely thought they had $1 billion after that. And I wanted to make sure I got those facts right. So I was like consulting with accountants and really running those numbers. Other research, I mean, it's just always fun to like research professions. So I have a dentist, I have the art teacher, and I like just dipping my toe and learning about jobs that aren't mine. And so I wouldn't say I learned anything particularly surprising about those industries, but I just those jobs, but I just learned more what it's like to have those professions, which like, I don't know. It's just like, it's always nice to keep learning. And I'm from New Jersey. I'm definitely a Jersey girl through and through, but I didn't know Long Beach Island that well. And so researching Long Beach Island, spending time there, learning the restaurants, the roads, what the houses look like, what the community is like, the nuances between the different areas. That was really interesting. That was really fun.
It sounds like it. Just a funny aside, I'm in Long Beach, California, and every once in a while when we're searching for a restaurant, something, I get things from Long Beach, New York coming up, and it's like, no, that's a little too far to go for dinner.
That would be a little far for dinner.
So you're probably asked this all the time now, but what would you do if you won the lottery?
I would never win the lottery because I would never buy a ticket.
Uh-huh.
I'm totally disinterested. I've never bought a lottery ticket in my life, except for the one I bought on Long Beach Island so that I could take a picture with it for book promotion. I think I would say it's just not a good thing. I don't want that change in circumstances. I like my life and I don't want to have a dramatic change. I don't want the stress of it. And so I would buy nothing because I will never be a winner.
Okay. Well, I was thinking about it quite a bit, and I also don't play, so it wouldn't happen. Although I used to give to an office pool every once in a while. But one thing that the pandemic taught me is that I do not want to quit my job and not have any structure to my day. So
structure, routine, purpose, all very
Right,
important.
exactly. Yeah, so don't see me doing any lifestyle changes. Maybe renovating the kitchen and doing a little more travel, but other than that, I'd probably go into retirement and my kids' future retirement.
I guess, yes, it would be nice to maybe buy houses for my kids, but I would probably buy them on the street, same street as me, and then they would not want that. So
Yes.
that's kind of like Laura in the book. She uses the money to keep her children close, but that's not always without problems.
So, do you have any projects in the works that you'd like to talk about?
Nothing that I'm ready to share yet, other than I'm probably going to be starting to write a screenplay not based on any of my books, an original concept with one of my friends. And I am writing another novel, but I haven't completely decided what it's about yet. So I have to it's not even keeping it under wraps. I don't know what it is. So,
Okay, that's cool. Is there anything you would like to answer that I haven't thought to ask about?
no, I guess, if anyone is listening and is on social media, I love to connect with readers. So my Instagram is the best place to find me, which is just my name, Elyssa Friedland. And if anyone's in a book club, there's a very nice book club kit on my website for this book that has some extra material and questions, and it's worthwhile checking out.
Okay, great. And I was going to ask you about contact information. So your name is Elyssa Friedland, Friedland.
Yes. So that's where you can find me on Instagram, and my website is also ElyssaFriedland.com.
Great. So if someone were to use your book as a call for action for Tikkun Olam, for repairing the world, what would it be?
I would say to do something like visiting someone who's socially isolated, because at the end of the day, the book really emphasizes connections between people over material things. So if you read the book and you're inspired to do Tikkun Olam, I would say a good place to start would be calling someone is lonely, checking in on them, visiting them, thinking about the people you might pass every day, and you never take the time to think, well, I see them a lot, but are they lonely? And just think about the people around you more deeply. So reach out to the ones are lonely, and just take a better look at the people you see every day, and take the time to consider whether they might actually be more lonely than you realize.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you, Elyssa Friedland, for speaking with me about Jackpot Summer.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Cheryl. I appreciate you having me.
It's been my pleasure. If you are interested in any of the books we discussed today, you can find them at your favorite board and brick or online bookstore, or at your local library. Thanks to Dianki for use of his Freilich, which definitely makes me happy. This podcast is a project of the Association of Jewish Libraries, and you can find more about it at www.jewishlibraries.org/nicejewishbooks. I would like to thank AJL and my podcast mentor, Heidi Rabinowitz. Keep listening for the promo for her latest episode.
Hey, this is Chris Barron, member of the Facebook group for the love of middle grade. We'll be joining you soon on the Book of Life podcast.
I'd like to dedicate my episodes to teen librarians everywhere who are trying to figure out how to serve middle grade readers and young teens.
I'd like to dedicate this episode to my community and communities everywhere of friends and family, Jewish and non-Jewish, who make the time to gather around tables for Passover and Shabbat and beyond.
The Book of Life is the sister podcast of Nice Jewish Books. I'm your host, Heidi Rabinowitz, and I podcast about Jewish Kid Lit. Join me to hear my conversation about middle grade books with Chris Barron and Karen Jensen at bookoflifepodcast.com.